This story has touched millions of hearts around the world. It tells of a single father who turned humiliation into a motivation for success, all for a promise he made to his young son. Gabriel Martinez's weathered hands trembled slightly as he pushed open the large glass doors of the high-end jewelry store. The Timepiece Guild, in Beverly Hills. The November wind was bitter, cutting through his faded, worn jacket and black jeans as if they were made of paper. His 8-year-old son, Leo, walked beside him, his bright eyes wide with wonder as they stepped into a world that seemed miles away from the temporary shelter they had left that morning. "Dad, everything sparkles like stars," Leo whispered, his voice barely audible above the soft classical music playing throughout the showroom. His tattered sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor, each step echoing in the vast space filled with luxury items that cost more than most people made in years. The showroom was a cathedral of exquisite craftsmanship. Gleaming Swiss watches sat like precious jewels under perfectly positioned LED lighting. The walls were adorned with awards and photographs of celebrity clients. The scent of leather and new metal filled the air, a stark contrast to the harsh reality Gabriel and Leo had been living for the past 6 months since losing their small apartment. Gabriel had once been a talented graphic designer for a promising advertising firm. But when the company folded overnight, taking his savings and dreams with it, everything unraveled quickly. His wife, Maria, had passed away from a heart condition 2 years earlier, leaving him to raise Leo alone. Without her medical insurance from her teaching job and with mounting medical bills, they had lost everything. "Can I help you?" The voice was sharp, cutting through Leo's moment of wonder like a blade through silk. Standing before them was Isabella Vance, the 30-year-old CEO of the Timepiece Guild. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, and her tailored charcoal gray business suit probably cost more than Gabriel had made in his last month of employment. Her icy blue eyes scanned them from head to toe with undisguised disdain. Isabella had built this store from the ground up after inheriting money from her grandfather's real estate empire. She prided herself on catering exclusively to Hollywood's elite movie stars, entertainment industry moguls, and old money families. She had a reputation for maintaining the prestige of her showroom, which meant keeping out what she considered undesirable elements. "We were just looking," Gabriel said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of exhaustion. Leo pressed closer to his side, sensing the tension in the air. Isabella's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against her tablet as she looked them up and down again. "Looking at what, exactly? This is a luxury establishment, not a museum. Our watches start at $20,000. Leo tugged on Gabriel's jacket, pointing toward a stunning wristwatch positioned near the center of the showroom. The watch sat under a spotlight like a work of art, with its deep blue face catching the light and casting tiny, sparkling streaks across the wall. "Dad, that one looks like a starry sky." For a moment, Gabriel's heart swelled with pride at his son's poetic observation. Despite everything they had been through, Leo still found beauty in the world. He still dreamed, but Isabella's harsh laugh shattered the moment. "A starry sky," Isabella repeated mockingly, her voice carrying across the showroom. The customers, a well-dressed couple examining a necklace, turned to look. "That starry sky costs $50,000, little boy. Maybe you should look at toy watches instead." The color drained from Leo's face. Gabriel felt his son's hand tighten in his, felt his small body shrink with shame. Something deep inside him, something that had been bending under the weight of their circumstances, finally snapped. "He's 8 years old," Gabriel said, his voice low but firm. "He was just making an observation about something beautiful." Isabella stepped closer, her heels clicking ominously against the marble. "Listen, I don't know how you got past security, but this isn't a place for people like you. My clients expect a certain atmosphere when they're making investments of this magnitude. Your presence here is disruptive to business." "We weren't bothering anyone," Gabriel replied, his jaw clenching. "We were just looking." "Looking implies the ability to buy," Isabella shot back. "And clearly that's not the case here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave before I call security." The well-dressed couple had stopped pretending to examine their jewelry and were now openly staring. A salesman in an expensive suit whispered something to his colleague, and they both turned to watch the drama unfold. Leo's eyes filled with tears, and he tugged harder on Gabriel's jacket. "Dad, let's go," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't like it here anymore." But Gabriel knelt down to Leo's level, his hands gently cupping his face. "Leo, look at me. Do you remember what Mom used to say about dreams?" Leo nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. She said, "Dreams are promises we make to our future selves." "That's right," Gabriel said, his voice steady, despite the humiliation burning in his chest. He stood up and looked directly at the silver watch, then at Isabella. "My son loves that watch. He thinks it looks like a starry sky. And you know what? He's right. It's beautiful." Isabella crossed her arms, her expression one of impatient disgust. "This is getting ridiculous. I'm calling security." But Gabriel wasn't done. He turned to Leo, speaking loudly enough for everyone in the showroom to hear. "Leo, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember this watch. And I want you to remember what I'm about to promise you." He pointed at the watch. "I promise you, on your mother's memory, that someday I will walk back into this store and I will buy that exact watch. Not one like it. That one. And when I do, it will be because we never gave up. Because we never stopped believing that things could get better." Leo's tears stopped, replaced by something else. Hope, maybe, or faith in his father's words. He nodded solemnly. "I believe you, Dad." Isabella rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. Save the Disney movie speeches for someone gullible enough to believe them." Security. Two large men in dark suits began walking toward them from across the showroom. Gabriel took Leo's hand again, his heart pounding, but his resolve strengthened by the promise he had just made. "Come on, my prince," he said softly. "We have work to do." As they walked toward the exit, Leo turned back one more time to look at the silver watch. Isabella watched them go with a satisfied smirk, already dismissing them from her mind, as she turned to greet the well-dressed couple, who were clearly more worthy of her attention. But as the glass doors closed behind Gabriel and Leo, neither Isabella nor anyone else in that gleaming showroom could have imagined that they had just witnessed the birth of one of the most determined comebacks in Beverly Hills history. The homeless man in the faded jacket had just made a promise that would change everything. The security guards reached the exit just as the doors closed, but Gabriel and Leo were already walking away, hand in hand, into an uncertain future that somehow felt less hopeless than it had an hour before. In Leo's mind, the silver watch was no longer just a luxury item. It was a symbol of his father's love and determination. And in Gabriel's mind, it had become something even more powerful, a target. 6 months after that humiliating day at the jewelry store, Gabriel Martinez sat in a tiny shared office space in downtown Los Angeles, his eyes burning from staring at computer code for 4 hours straight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his makeshift workspace, a folding table wedged between a failing marketing consultancy and a woman who sold handmade jewelry online. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step up from their temporary shelter. Leo was asleep on a small cot in the corner, covered by his old jacket. He had learned to do his homework quietly while his dad worked. never complaining about the late nights or the smell of instant ramen that had become their primary food source. The 8-year-old had developed a maturity beyond his years, understanding without being told that Daddy was working on something important, something that would change their lives. "Still here, Gabriel?" Janet, the jewelry maker, called as she packed up her supplies. "It's past midnight." "Almost got it," Gabriel replied, not looking up from his screen. His fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced precision, debugging a piece of code that had been giving him trouble for weeks. For the past 6 months, Gabriel had been living on a revelation that came to him 3 days after the jewelry store incident. While researching ways to improve their situation at the public library, he had stumbled across an article about the inefficiencies in inventory management for small businesses. Having worked in software development before his life fell apart, he recognized a massive gap in the market, a problem that millions of businesses faced, but no one had effectively solved. The idea was elegantly simple: create an AI-powered platform that could predict supply chain disruptions before they happened, automatically adjusting orders and inventory to prevent shortages and overstock situations. The technology existed, but no one had packaged it in a way that small and medium-sized businesses could afford or easily implement. Gabriel had taught himself machine learning and artificial intelligence during those long nights in the shelter using free online courses and borrowed library computers. Leo would curl up next to him with a book while he absorbed everything he could about neural networks, predictive analytics, and automation systems. He called it Dad's magic computer learning. And somehow, his innocent faith in his abilities kept him going through the darkest moments. Now, 6 months later, he was on the verge of something extraordinary. His prototype, which he had named Logisense, had successfully predicted supply disruptions for 3 small businesses in Los Angeles with 94% accuracy. Word was spreading quietly through the business community, and he had received calls from companies as far away as San Diego and San Francisco. "Dad." Leo's sleepy voice came from the corner. "Did you fix the computer problem?" Gabriel turned to look at his son, his heart clenching with love and determination. Even in sleep, he clutched a small toy car. To Gabriel, it represented everything he was fighting for. "Almost, baby boy. Go back to sleep. I'll wake you when it's time to go home." Home was now a small efficiency apartment they had managed to rent after Gabriel sold his first Logisense license to a regional restaurant chain for $5,000. It wasn't much, but it had a real bed for Leo and a space where Gabriel could work without worrying about library closing times. His phone buzzed with a text message. Gabriel glanced at the screen and felt his pulse quicken. The message was from Ethan Blake, CEO of Global Distribution, one of the largest food distributors in the Southwest. "Heard about your predictive platform from Tom Riley at Prime Eats. His efficiency is up 23% since implementing your system. Can we meet tomorrow? I have a proposition that could be mutually beneficial. Ethan." Gabriel stared at the message, hardly daring to breathe. Global Distribution was exactly the kind of major client that could transform Logisense from a promising startup into a legitimate business. If Ethan Blake was interested, it meant Gabriel's 6 months of 18-hour days, instant ramen dinners, and coding until his eyes bled had been worth it. But more than that, it meant he was one step closer to keeping the promise he had made to Leo. He looked over at his sleeping son, remembering the way his face had crumpled when Isabella Vance mocked his innocent observation about the silver watch looking like a starry sky. The memory still made his blood boil, but it also fueled something deeper, an unshakable determination to prove that circumstances don't define worth. Gabriel had grown up poor himself, the son of a single mother who cleaned office buildings to make ends meet. He knew what it felt like to be dismissed, overlooked, and treated as invisible by people who had been born into privilege. but his mother had taught him something Isabella Vance clearly never learned. True strength comes from how you treat people who can do nothing for you. Tomorrow, Leo, he whispered to his sleeping son. Tomorrow, we start building our future. He turned back to his computer and opened his calendar application. The meeting with Ethan Blake would happen at 2 p.m. at Global Distribution's headquarters, a gleaming office building in Beverly Hills that represented everything Gabriel and Leo were working toward. But first, he needed to finish debugging the latest upgrade to Logisense's core algorithm. As he dove back into the code, Gabriel allowed himself a small smile. Somewhere across town, Isabella Vance was probably sleeping in her luxury penthouse, completely unaware that the homeless man she had humiliated was about to revolutionize an entire industry. She had no idea that her cruelty had awakened something in Gabriel that would have remained dormant under easier circumstances. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Leo breathed softly in his sleep, and Gabriel Martinez continued typing, building the future one line of code at a time. Outside, Los Angeles slept, but inside that cramped shared office, dreams were being transformed into reality through sheer force of will and the unbreakable bond between a father and son. 2 years to the day after Isabella Vance had humiliated them, Gabriel Martinez stood before his bedroom mirror, deliberately putting on the same faded jacket and worn black jeans he'd worn that devastating afternoon. The clothes hung differently now. He had filled out from the gaunt homeless man he had been. His face had color again, and his eyes held a confidence that came from proving the impossible possible. "Dad, are you sure about wearing those old clothes?" Leo asked from the doorway. At 10 years old, he was taller, more articulate, and possessed a wisdom that still amazed Gabriel daily. He understood the symbolism of this moment better than most adults would. "Very sure, my prince," Gabriel replied, straightening the collar of the jacket that had once been his only decent piece of clothing. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is showing people exactly who you were when they decided you weren't worth their respect. Leo nodded solemnly, then brightened. "I kept my promise, too." He held up the small toy car that had been his constant companion for 2 years. "I'm going to leave this one in the real watch when we get it, as a thank you gift for keeping us company while we waited." Gabriel felt his throat tighten with emotion. His son's capacity for gratitude and grace, even after everything they had endured, never ceased to humble him. He had learned lessons about perseverance and dignity that many adults never master. Their current home was a 3-bedroom house in one of Los Angeles's nicest neighborhoods, a far cry from the efficiency apartment and temporary shelter that had defined their previous existence. But Gabriel had been careful not to let success spoil Leo or make him forget where they came from. Every night they still read together. Every morning he still made his own breakfast. The money had changed their circumstances, but not their values. "Are you nervous about seeing the mean lady again?" Leo asked as they prepared to leave. Gabriel considered the question carefully. "Not nervous, exactly. But I want you to watch carefully today, Leo. Watch how we handle this situation. We're not going there to be cruel or to embarrass anyone the way we were embarrassed. We're going there to keep a promise and to show you that dreams are worth fighting for." The drive to the Timepiece Guild in Beverly Hills felt surreal. Gabriel drove his current car, a modest sedan that had served them well during his business's growth phase, while Ethan Blake followed in his own vehicle. Ethan had insisted on witnessing this moment, calling it one of the most inspiring comebacks in Los Angeles business history. As they pulled into the familiar parking lot, Gabriel felt a complex mix of emotions. The last time he had walked through those glass doors, he had been desperate, broken, clinging to hope by the thinnest thread. Now he was returning as the CEO of Logisense Technologies, a company that had revolutionized inventory management and was being courted by Fortune 500 companies nationwide. "There it is," Leo whispered, pointing through the showroom windows. The Starry Sky watch, the silver timepiece, sat in almost the exact same position as it had 2 years ago, its metallic sheen catching the afternoon light and casting the same ethereal reflections that had captured Leo's imagination. Gabriel felt a chill of destiny, as if the universe had been holding this moment in reserve, waiting for them to grow strong enough to claim it. Isabella Vance was visible through the windows, speaking animatedly to a well-dressed couple near a black watch. She looked exactly the same, impeccably groomed, expensively dressed, radiating the cold confidence that came from never having her assumptions challenged. She had no idea that her life was about to intersect once again with the people she had dismissed as beneath her notice. "Ready, my prince?" Gabriel asked, taking Leo's hand. "Ready, Dad." And they walked through the glass doors together. Ethan Blake was a respectful few steps behind. The classical music was the same, the marble floors just as polished, the atmosphere of exclusive luxury unchanged. But everything else was different because Gabriel and Leo were different. Isabella finished with her current customers and turned toward the entrance, her practiced smile faltering slightly as her eyes scanned the new arrivals. Gabriel watched recognition dawn slowly in her expression. First confusion, then a flicker of memory, then something that might have been discomfort. "I can help you?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual authoritative edge. Something about Gabriel's bearing, despite his casual clothes, commanded respect in a way that puzzled her. "I believe we spoke a couple of years ago," Gabriel said calmly. "My son and I were admiring that silver watch over there." He pointed to the same timepiece Leo had compared to a starry sky. Isabella's perfectly manicured fingers gripped her tablet more tightly as the memory crystallized. The homeless man and his son. The scene she had been so proud of handling efficiently, maintaining the store's standards. But something was wrong with this picture. The man before her carried himself with quiet authority, and there was something in his eyes, not desperation this time, but certainty. Yes, I think I remember," Isabella said carefully. "You were browsing." Leo stepped forward, his young voice clear and confident. "You said I should look at toy watches instead of real ones. You said the Starry Sky watch was too expensive for people like us." A flush crept up Isabella's neck as the full context of their previous encounter came flooding back. She remembered her dismissive words, her satisfaction at maintaining the store's exclusive atmosphere. But why were they here now? And why did she suddenly feel like she was the one at a disadvantage? "I'm here to make good on a promise I made to my son that day," Gabriel continued, his voice steady and professional. "I told him I'd come back and buy that exact watch, the one he said looked like a starry sky." Isabella's eyes darted between Gabriel and Leo, then to Ethan Blake, who was clearly with them and obviously successful himself. The pieces weren't fitting together in any way that made sense to her worldview. People like them, the way they had been, didn't come back. They certainly didn't come back as customers. "Sir, I'm not sure what kind of game this is," Isabella began, her voice regaining some of its edge. "But if you're here to waste my time—" "I'm here to buy a watch," Gabriel interrupted gently. "That watch specifically, and I'll be paying cash." The showroom had grown quiet. Other customers and sales staff had begun to notice the tension in the air, the unusual dynamic playing out near the entrance. Isabella felt their attention like a spotlight, and for the first time in years, she wasn't certain she controlled the situation. "Cash," she repeated, her voice barely concealing her skepticism. "Sir, that timepiece is priced at $85,000. Gabriel reached into his jacket and withdrew a cashier's check, holding it so she could see the amount clearly. Isabella's eyes widened as she processed the numbers. $85,000. Made out to the Timepiece Guild, signed and certified that morning. I believe this should cover the purchase price, Gabriel said calmly. Plus, I'd like to discuss upgrading the warranty package and adding the premium laser engraving system my son wanted to hear about that day. The check was real. Isabella's practiced eye could tell immediately, but nothing about this situation made sense. How had the desperate homeless man from 2 years ago acquired nearly $90,000? And why was he standing in her showroom wearing the same threadbare clothes, acting like he belonged here? "Dad," Leo said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Is this the part where you tell her about your company?" Isabella's blood ran cold. Company? What company? She looked more closely at Gabriel, trying to reconcile the composed businessman before her with her memory of the broken man she had ejected from her showroom. Ethan Blake stepped forward with perfect timing. "Isabella Vance, I presume." Ethan Blake, CEO of Global Distribution. I wanted to personally witness Gabriel here keeping the promise he made to his son. It's not every day you meet someone who transforms a moment of adversity into this kind of success. Isabella's world tilted on its axis. Ethan Blake was a legend in Los Angeles business circles, the kind of client she dreamed of landing for years, and he was standing here, making her feel small and insignificant. I don't understand," she stammered, all pretense of authority gone. "You don't have to," Gabriel said, his voice soft but firm. "I'm not here for your understanding. I'm here for my son." He turned to the nearest salesman. "Could you please finalize the purchase and arrange for the engraving? My son has a special message for the watch." The salesman, sensing the shift in power, quickly took the check and led Gabriel and Leo to a private consultation area, leaving Isabella standing alone in the middle of her showroom. She watched, speechless, as they completed the transaction. When the watch was ready, Gabriel held it out for Leo to see. "Read it, my son," he said. Leo's voice was clear and confident as he read the inscription on the back of the watch. "A promise is a starry sky we create for our future selves." Gabriel put the watch on Leo's wrist. It was a perfect fit, a symbol of everything they had overcome. He took the small toy car from his pocket and placed it inside the watch's empty box. "This is for the journey," he whispered to Leo. As they walked out of the store, hand in hand, Gabriel didn't look back. There was no need for revenge. Their success was the most powerful answer he could give. They had walked in as people who were looked down upon, but they left as victors. Later that evening, as Gabriel sat in his comfortable living room, he held the watch box in his hand. The toy car inside was a small, quiet reminder of where they had been. He looked at Leo, who was already asleep, the beautiful watch gleaming softly on his wrist. In that moment, Gabriel knew the watch was not the ultimate prize. The true reward was the promise he had kept. Not for money or for power, but for the love of his son and the belief that they deserved a better future. He looked out the window, and across town, Isabella Vance was likely in her penthouse, surrounded by her expensive belongings. But for the first time, she had tasted the bitterness of her own cruelty, realizing that the value of a person is not defined by what they own, but by what they cherish. This story is a testament that a promise, a little bit of hope, and unwavering determination can change everything. Because sometimes, the most beautiful dreams are the ones that seem impossible to everyone else.